So video 3 of the Illustrator series. By this point you should have finished creating all the paths for your map. That should all be inside this layer here called paths. I've created mine with lots of different little paths that I've created with the pen tool. You can just press P to create all those, and if you make any mistakes, it doesn't really matter. You can just click on the white sub selection tool and you can adjust anything you like or make any changes to anything you need to. So black tool, you just select things. You can change the widths. I've made my paths 20 point there and the paths over here are 10 point. If ever you're getting annoyed with clicking on different paths and getting them to select, you can always of course hide different paths if they're getting in the way and then put them back on later. That doesn't matter. So either way, paths should be finished, and that's what I've created for X sector. The next thing we're going to do is create some little icons that represent the different themed rides that are in the park. And the first one for this demo I'm going to show off is the Enterprise, which is this one here. We could use the tools in Illustrator to do that. We could actually use circle tools, line tools, and so on, and set all the properties down here with the colors. But we're going to do a little trick in Illustrator called tracing a bitmap. And the way we're going to do that is use a little website called logomakr.com, logomakr.com, and it's a nice little vector tool for building very, very simple logos that you can bring in. So the ride we're going to do is the Enterprise, which if I show that to you, Alton Towers Enterprise, this is what it looks like. It's a big circular disc like the London Eye that you ride around and go around on the outside. It's themed from this thing, the USS Enterprise, which is actually, it's themed, the big disc is obviously themed on this little thing from a Star Trek series, and that originally got its name from the ship. But either way, some kind of big spinning disc would be a suitable icon for that. So all I did was use this little website to create myself a nice little vector of what I wanted to make. I searched for some different shapes. You can bring them in, you can just bring in any shape you like, and very, very quickly you can build a logo of some sort. Either way, that's the one I created. So this is the tool we're going to use. We'll snip it. So we'll take the snipping tool, making sure that nothing's selected, so click off anything on the canvas, make sure it's not selected, bring up the snipping tool very carefully and press new. We're just going to snip this black box, that'll do me, and we'll go into Illustrator, and the Enterprise is here, so we'll paste that in, and there's the Enterprise. It's obviously too big at the moment, so we'll just resize that down to whatever size would be appropriate using the black selection tool, and we'll bring it to about that size, and I want it to be about there. At the moment, this is a bitmap graphic. This is a vector program, and this is a vector program, but the process of me snipping it is turning it into a bitmap, which means that instead of all the lines being represented by mathematical, like graphs, mathematical lines, they're actually represented, if I zoom in, by a big grid of dots, and this is known as a bitmap graphic. And you can see here, all these lines, when you zoom in, they become really, really pixelated, or really, like, you can see all the blocks, and we don't want that because this is meant to be for the idea of making this as big as you possibly can. So what we do is a really, really nice tool in Illustrator for doing this. It's called Live Trace. You select the object that you want to live trace. In this case, it's going to be this little compressed Enterprise picture, and the settings we're going to use for this is one color logo. There's lots of different settings you can change. You can choose all the different settings. In fact, let's try black and white logo, so we'll just select that one. And what that's done is it's tried in Illustrator to create the best vector it possibly could from it. And it does a pretty good job of it, especially when the original picture is quite blocky in itself. So we'll go for the direct selection tool, and now what we can start to do once we press expand is this essentially creates all the line tools as if someone had got a pen and gone round this perfectly, and it does it all for us, which is a nifty tool when you might want to make small changes to it. So no matter how far you zoom in on this now, it's created a vector, so it doesn't actually matter how big it gets, it will always be that high quality. Maybe, for instance, you don't, for example, want this center circle, or maybe you could delete it, or maybe you want to make some changes to it. Well, of course, that would look ridiculous if I changed it like that, but the idea is there that you could make changes to any of these sub-elements. You could even, if you wanted to, change the fill color of something. If I double click, I could change it to a different color possibly, and so on. I don't know. You can change it to your heart's content, but that's the idea. Or maybe I decide I don't necessarily want that black there. You can still see the word enterprise. Maybe that's the way I want that logo to be. But the idea is you should be playing around with the trace tool to make some of these. Or you can draw them in the tools yourself. But it's quite fun, especially when you take actual pictures of objects. For example, if you actually took that picture, for example, and tried out the trace tool. It takes a bit of time to get used to it, but it's a nice little tool. So the rest of this really should be about you creating at least five or six or more of the ride objects. These are meant to be little vector graphics that represent the different rides, and maybe some text that outlines what the ride is about. In this case, in X sector, I've got Enterprise, Oblivion, the Smiler. I've got two food restaurants. One's called Fried Chicken Company and one's called Rehydrator. So you get the idea. Each should be themed and appropriate for what you're trying to create. Remembering this is the zone's theme. So remembering that this one is 1984 theme of oppression.